Right.
I don't know if that's an accurate stat, but it just seems like people are struggling in relationships, in a new relationship. They're struggling finding a great partner when they start dating.
Yeah.
They're struggling trying to figure out, is this the right partner for me? They're struggling to figure out their own wounds and how their traumas interact with someone else's traumas, and is there a good match? All these different things cause people to struggle in relationships and break up within the first year, it seems like. Why do you think people are struggling more than ever today to have a healthy, happy relationship?
I would say it's the illusion of options that we've got today that we've never had before in the form of online dating, social media, and pornography. What that means is when we enter relationships, we're almost assessing if that partner is worthy of us. And there's almost an element of narcissism when we walk in. We're like, can I get better? Can I get the most I can get? Is this the most satisfying sexual relationship I've ever had? And if that person doesn't tick every single box off, instead of reflecting on what you need to heal and what you need to bring to the table and how you can help this relationship survive, we simply replace them with the illusion of options. Even if we don't have alternatives, we think we do. So we let go far quicker than we previously would have.
Really? What do you think we should be asking ourselves about the person we want to date? Because it sounds like we want to have every box ticked of like, they have to be perfect, and they have to be funny, and they have to be rich, and they have to be good looking, and they need a good education. But what should we really be asking ourselves before we start dating someone?
How are my personal insecurities going to ruin this relationship?
Ooh.
Yeah, I think that's the first and foremost conversation to have with yourself.
How are my insecurities going to ruin this relationship?
How are my personal insecurities going to ruin this relationship?
Why is that the question we should ask ourselves?
Because we go into a relationship almost blind to our own wounds, and they resurface in the relationship, and we blame them for not providing the medication of a wound that existed before we met them.
That's so true. Wow.
Yeah, so what I mean by that is, say, for example, you grew up financially insecure and you meet a partner who's actually really nice to you, but he might not be able to soothe all your financial insecurities. You immediately think he's not good enough. Or you go into a relationship being addicted to pornography, and then you meet a woman who's actually just at your right level, but you're so used to a hypersexualized, promiscuous woman that you find her boring. Or you go into a relationship not being able to communicate, and then you meet somebody else who's not also communicating, and you don't voice your concerns. So I would say, ask yourself, how are your insecurities going to ruin this relationship? And how do I create a buffer so that doesn't occur?
So when we're aware, because a lot of us, we go into a relationship not thinking where we have insecurities or that we're broken.
Yeah.
We're usually like, well, the previous relationship didn't work because of them.
Yeah.
It was their fault, or they did this, but really it always comes back to us. We chose something, we didn't see something early on, we let something slide, we didn't create a boundary, we abandoned ourselves, we didn't communicate consciously, whatever it is.
Yeah.
We let things slide too often, but we don't take a look unless, for me, there's enough pain to say, okay, here's all the stuff I don't like about me.
Yeah.
Here's all my insecurities, all my baggage, all my trauma, all my challenges. The reason why I keep causing pain in relationship, why it doesn't keep working, is because of me.
Yeah.
Whoever the person is, right?
Yeah. You're the common denominator.
You're the common denominator.
Yeah.
So once we take inventory of our personal insecurities, how can we then create a buffer going into a relationship so we don't self-sabotage?
We make sure that we are trying to heal those wounds without expecting that person to break their back to help us heal.
Right.
So what I mean by that is, if I know I have an issue with jealousy, I'm trying to work on it, but at the same time, the person doesn't have to break their back to make sure I feel soothed. Okay, I pick consciously, I pick really well because I know that's a wound of mine, but I also learn to embrace and trust the process. Now, when you go in wounded and expect the person to provide you medication, but you don't even tell them what disease you have, we are then going to punish them for everything they do.
Oh my gosh, that's the worst feeling.
I honestly, and I've done it many times.
You've done it in relationships.
Yeah, of course.
I've had that experience to myself in relationships. It's not fun.
Unfortunately, you go in expecting them to be the healer or the doctor to a wound that you didn't create, but you don't even tell them your diagnosis. And as a result, it's destined for failure.
And they're not the expert at healing that wound.
And they didn't cause it.
And they didn't cause it.
They didn't cause it.
Why do so many, I'm not going to generalize, but it seems like a lot of women that you hear about with content online.
Yeah.
Why do we see so many women causing frustration in their relationship when they start dating a man based on a wound that someone else did, not the man in front of them?
Because we've created a generation of narcissistic women. And what's happened is the rise of social media and the rise of online dating and the rise of feminism has taught women that they are not to blame for any poor choices. Every poor choice is glamorized. So if you want to be a sex worker, it's great. If you want to post in bikini pictures online, it's fine. If you want to be with it, every poor choice is glamorized, and every internal reflection is seen as gaslighting yourself. So they've even got terms for internal reflection to prevent it happening. And so what will happen is they are trained to not reflect on themselves because we've been told we've been oppressed for so many years. Now it's time to make sure we project. And so we don't take any accountability. And as a result, when we get into relationships, if we don't feel completely soothed all the time, he must be a narcissist. He must be a manipulator. He must be gaslighting. He, rather than I. And unfortunately, we've got an online market that caters to that wounded woman, that caters to that entitled woman, and caters to that narcissistic woman. And it's so wild to me that so many women talk about narcissism, but the society today is just catering to narcissistic women. If I post a picture online, a bikini picture online, there's nothing my husband can do that could compete with that level of accolade.
Attention.
Impossible.
The compliments, the attention, the messaging, the you're so sexy and beautiful, and all these different things from thousands or potentially millions of men
around the world
who have money and all these things.
Yeah, and there's nothing he can do. He can't post online and get the same reaction. And more so, he can't give me the same level of validation. Oh my gosh. So what's happened is we've created a setup in society that means men have to compete with a level of validation they can't compete with. And if they go online, if they join Tinder, that night they can have so many more options than a man can because we've got filters and we've got all of these. Again, I really am privy to this myself. I'm a filter queen. So, but the things I can do to manipulate male validation,
to get more attention from men,
just soothe myself and to remind myself I'm above this. I don't need him. I can replace him. Is something men actually can't do. So they have to rely on pornography for that. They replace us with pornography and we replace them with likes and comments on social media.
Wow. How did this happen? Like, why do you think, is this a values thing, a lack of values thing? Is this okay, if I feel wounded or I feel some type of trauma, I need an emotional release. And so this makes me feel good. And then it's just a slippery slope into more and more. How does this start and when does it end?
I think it comes from the fact that we've created a culture that whenever there's a problem, there's a temporary solution that doesn't get rid of the root. So what I mean by that is if there's a problem with intimacy for men and they're not getting women, there's pornography. If there's a problem of low self-esteem in women because they don't have meaning and purpose, they can post a few pictures online. We've created a way of solving problems that doesn't get rid of the root. So we're always seeking highs. And the problem with highs is they come with lows. So you end up having more problems, more low self-esteem, and then seeking bigger highs to get that kind of back to neutral state. So I think the problem comes with problems being solved by seeking highs and a real focus on kind of values that are very empty materialistic values. So you are a beautiful, high-value woman if you're really, really beautiful. And you're a high-value man now if you are really, really rich. But there's nothing to do with connection and intimacy that now gives us status. And I think that's come from social media mainly.
Where does this lead over the next 3 to 5 years with this narcissistic, society, I guess, that's been built in this way? What happens for people in relationships? Are people able to find intimacy and connection and stay committed and be actually happy in a healthy relationship, or is it only going to get worse?
It leads to intense and pervasive loneliness, unfortunately.
Really?
And it probably will only get worse. Unfortunately, until we wake up to the impact of technology, both on men and women, it's going to lead to a complete identity crisis, external kind of extrinsic values that don't benefit anybody, which then manifests in depression and loneliness, self-inflicted depression and loneliness. Yeah, when I say depression and loneliness, it's not like I have a disease or anything. It's self-inflicted through poor choices. So unfortunately, it's going to lead to men not being able to commit to women because they can get all of the joys of sexual relationships without having to invest. and women not being able to commit to men because they can get all the validation of male attention without having to adapt and change themselves according to the needs of the relationship.
What happens when men and women never commit?
They find themselves unable to put somebody else's well-being above their own. So we're creating people who are entirely individualistic, deprived of responsibility, and unable to care and nurture for others because they're not putting somebody else's well-being above theirs. When you are unable to commit, essentially you wake up every single day saying, what do I want to do? What do I want to do today? And as nice and as freeing as that is, it deprives you of human responsibility. And in order to truly become something, we're designed to be responsible. We're designed to be valuable. We're designed to serve others. This is how we've evolved. So becoming completely individualistic leads to a sense of lonely narcissism, I believe.
What is the age generation of, in your opinion, of the highest amount of narcissistic men and women? Is it people from 15 to 22? Is it 20s to 30s? Like, what is the age group that you see as the most extreme narcissist?
I would imagine it would be from 15 to 25. This is without any research onto it. I would imagine so because they're raised to serve their desires, not serve others. We have raised children to serve themselves in every way, shape, and form. So whether that is through, pornographic intimacy, sending each other Snapchats of each other nude. This is something that was alien. Like in our generation, it was unheard of. But the average 12-year-old is now put under pressure to send nudes to the other average. And one thing I had
really, 12-year-olds?
12-year-olds. I used to be a teacher, so I used to experience this a lot. Where
12-year-olds are sending nudes on Snapchat to each other?
To each other. Coerced to all volunteer.
Just to get more attention, right?
Yeah.
Or to get...
And what's so weird is when you work with children, we're always told about predators, and we're always told about sexual assault from old predators. But you would be so surprised at the level and age of sexual predators now. They're aged between 12 and 15 now. 12 to 15-year-olds are now becoming predatory because they're so saturated by sex that they've dehumanized connection and they see it as part of growing up.
Well, I mean, why would a 12 or 13 or 15-year-old girl send a nude to another 12, 13 or 15-year-old boy?
Because they're growing up with role models who post on OnlyFans. They're growing up being told that you don't actually need an education. You can make $50,000 a month if you just post the right pictures online. So when you are told that and you are bored to death in a maths class and you're being told to learn about parameters of a rectangle that you don't care about, or you can see a really sexy girl talk about how much money she's making, where is a child going to go? Particularly when they're not raised in a home or environment which boosts their self-esteem and emphasizes internal morals. So why are our children going to go? It's not their fault at all. It's the society we've created and what we've glamorized and highlighted for children.
That's interesting because Martha, my girlfriend, she'll say that her dad did a really great job when she was, 10, 11, 12, 13, when boys started to show attention, right?
Yeah.
He did a really great job. I'm paraphrasing what she told me, that he used to say, listen, guys are going to tell you you're beautiful. You already know that.
Yeah.
So don't be wowed when they say you're beautiful, you're pretty, you look attractive. Like, know that you have other values to contribute. And if they don't see those other things, then okay, just they're friends, but don't buy into that type of game.
Well, don't let that be the most interesting thing about you. And what I find a little bit strange about being online is I'll get a lot of comments about my makeup and my appearance or whatever it is, which is very, very nice. But I didn't understand why that would even be part of the conversation. And I would imagine it's because they assume that if you have a certain appearance, why would you even bother working on your education? Because they almost see it as binary. If you've got one, you don't need the other. Well, you absolutely need the other. Because it's the only thing that will exist forever. Your looks is the only depreciating asset you have.
Wow.
So why would you want to derive your value from it and your self-esteem from it? We know it's depreciating.
Because what happens when the looks start to fade in women who've only put their value in their physical appearance? What happens?
Well, what happens is they end up with men who are equally shallow. Here's the thing. If I'm just a pretty face, I'm going to end up with a man who only likes pretty faces. Now, the reality is that man is so easily distracted with the next pretty face and the next 25-year-old and the next. So what will happen is you're in a constant competition with people you can't compete with for the rest of your life. And similarly, if I was somebody who just sold sex and I'm going to find a man who's addicted to sex. And men that are addicted to sex will always want novelty. You'll never be enough. So reality is when you create your identity on something so fragile, you attract somebody who's also very fragile, and then you end up in a lonely cycle, unfortunately. Yeah. Whereas when you develop something deep, you attract someone deeper, and your connection tends to be more long-lasting. God willing, it tends to be more long-lasting.
Right. I think I heard you share recently online something about like financial connection and emotional connection.
Yeah.
Can you explain more about that?
Yeah, I think what's happening, unfortunately, men are being indoctrinated into thinking that as long as you provide financially, you can get the hottest girl in the world, and as a result, you're a high value man and you've made it. But essentially, when you lead with finances, you attract a woman who's emotionally detached, because emotionally present women, finances does not compensate for lack of quality time. No matter how rich a man is, she wants quality time. Whereas emotionally detached women, they don't care if you're gone for 6 months on a business trip, as long as they've got a bag and a house and a Rolls Royce and whatever it is. So when you're that man, you're going to attract that woman. So you think, I'm providing her with everything, she's not going to go anywhere. She's thinking, you provided me with everything, now I can go somewhere.
Wow.
So you're actually, you've lured yourself into a false sense of security. A lot of really successful men will look at a woman and think, I've given her everything, she's not going to go anywhere. Because she's got external kind of extrinsic value, she's thinking, I've now got everything from this guy, where do I go next? So
what more can I get?
What more can I get?
From somewhere else.
From somewhere else.
Holy
and
cow.
So unfortunately...
Why is there not loyalty when a financially a stable man is able to provide finances to their partner? Why is that loyalty not there?
Because the glue of the relationship is broken.
Superficial.
Yeah, it's superficial. The glue they used was superficial. The glue he's relying on is physical attraction, and the glue she's relying is financial stability. The glue is weak. Whereas if the glue was emotional intimacy, absolutely you can get loyalty. You can't beat emotional intimacy when it comes to loyalty. Once you have emotional intimacy, it's very difficult for somebody to be your competition, because they know you in a way that nobody else can, and you can be vulnerable in a way nobody else can. But when you deprive your relationship of emotional intimacy, every single person is your competition. And this is something these people with junk values don't realize.
Wow.
Unfortunately. But did you find that hard? Being so financially successful, did you find it would attract the wrong kind of women?
Yeah, I've always been in relationships.
Yeah.
And so, I wasn't like single for 3 years and was like just attracting everyone. I was I loved intimacy. So I was more like diving into a commitment as quickly as if I found someone, I felt like, okay, maybe there's something here. But it just seems like with the content I see online and what I'm hearing from stories from people in the dating world and who've gone through divorce and breakups, like it is a struggle out there. It's what I'm hearing. And I don't know if that's just certain cities in America, or if that's globally, or if it's different in other countries.
Is it like that in LA? It's very much like that in cities.
I think it's extreme in LA, obviously.
Extreme, yeah. And unfortunately, because I come from Dubai and I live in London and stuff like that, I focus on the extremities. I know in simple villages this doesn't happen. Right. But unfortunately, I'm not privy to that. They tend to be healthy and they don't even watch my content. They're happy and they got their kids and they walk their dogs. The people that watch it are the ones that are struggling, and they're usually similar kind of issues. There's only 3 or 4 issues that all my clients will have.
What is that?
Infidelity, men in very much infidelity on part of the woman.